I never thought the moment my life would completely fall apart would start with my neighbor Dave catching me on my way to take out the garbage on a Tuesday morning. I had my coffee in one hand, trash bag in the other, still half asleep, thinking about nothing more than the quarterly report I had to submit by noon. Dave was already outside, pretending to water his plants. But the second he saw me, he dropped the hose and walked straight toward me. With this look on his face, the kind of look that makes your stomach drop before a single word is spoken. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice even though there was nobody else around. I've been going back and forth about whether to say something, but if it were me, I'd want to know. I remember setting the trash bag down slowly. Something in his tone made me feel like I needed both hands free. Dave is 63 years old. Retired firefighter. The kind of man who doesn't say much, but when he does, he means every single word. He and his wife Carol have lived next door to us for 4 years. We're not close friends, but we wave every morning, share a beer on the 4th of July, that kind of thing. He's not a gossip. He's not dramatic. So when this man, this steady, serious, no-nonsense man lowers his voice and tells me he's been losing sleep over something, you listen. "Every time you leave for those overnight work trips," he said, "a black Honda Civic pulls into your driveway. Usually around 9:30 at night. Stays until early morning, 5, sometimes 6 a.m. He paused and looked me dead in the eyes. "It's been happening every single time, Marcus. Every trip for the past 2 months at least." Carol noticed first. She thought maybe it was a family member or something, but it kept happening. Same car, same schedule, like clockwork. I stood there on my driveway holding a trash bag, staring at Dave, and I felt the world tilt about 30 degrees. "My name is Marcus. I'm 31 years old. I work in project management for a mid-sized construction firm, which means I travel, not constantly, but consistently about 2 overnight trips a month, sometimes 3, usually to job sites a few hours away. My wife, Janelle, and I have been married for 4 years. Together for 7. We met in college, got engaged the summer we both turned 26, bought this house 18 months ago. She works remotely as a UX designer. She's home most of the time. I thought that was one of the good things about our setup, that she wasn't alone, that she had stability, that we built something together. I thanked Dave. I told him I'd look into it. I shook his hand and he squeezed mine hard for a second, the way older men do when they want you to know they're serious. Then I walked back inside and sat at the kitchen table and didn't move for probably 20 minutes. Janelle was upstairs in her home office, already on a call. I could hear her laughing at something through the ceiling. That laugh that I used to think was just for me. Here's the thing about finding out your world might not be what you thought it was. Your brain does this strange thing where it starts running back through your memories and re-examining all of them. That little hesitation when you call, and it rings too long before she picks up. The way she started being really enthusiastic about my work trips, asking what days, making sure I had everything packed, suddenly very supportive of a schedule she used to complain about. The perfume that smelled slightly different one evening when I came home. Things I filed away as nothing. Things I gave her the benefit of the doubt on because I loved her and I trusted her and I thought we were building a life. I didn't go upstairs, I didn't say a word to Janelle that morning. I went to work, submitted my report, and spent every minute of my lunch break thinking. I want to be clear about something. I am not a man who acts on emotion. I grew up with a father who taught me that the most dangerous thing you can do in any serious situation is move before you think. He was a veteran, calm under pressure, methodical. He used to say, "The man who reacts loses. The man who responds wins." I've carried that with me my whole life, and I carried it into the worst week of my life. So I didn't confront Janelle. Not yet. The first thing I did was call my buddy Chris, who works in IT security. I told him what Dave told me. He listened without interrupting, and then he said, "Okay. Do you have a home security system?" We had a doorbell camera, basic stuff, and 2 outdoor cameras on the garage in the backyard. Chris walked me through how to access the full cloud archive. I had 60 days of footage I'd never once thought to look at. That night, after Janelle went to sleep, I sat in my car in the garage with my laptop and I went through it. There it was. A black Honda Civic. Pulling into my driveway at 9:14 p.m. on the Wednesday of my last work trip. Staying until 5:47 a.m. The camera angle wasn't perfect. I could see the car, could see a figure walking to my front door, but I couldn't make out a face clearly. Janelle opening the door. The porch light going off immediately after. 2 trips before that, same thing. Same car, same schedule. The trip before that, same. I sat in my cold car in the garage and I looked at this footage and something in my chest went very, very quiet. Not sad. Not angry. Just quiet. Like every emotion needed a second to line up before it decided what to do. I closed the laptop. I went inside. I got into bed next to my wife and I stared at the ceiling until my alarm went off. The next morning, I called my cousin Devin, who is a family law attorney in Charlotte. I didn't even explain everything, I just said, I think I need to understand my options. He told me to come by his office on my lunch break. No appointment needed. Devin is the kind of lawyer who doesn't sugarcoat anything. He sat across from me, listened to the full story, and then he pulled out a notepad and started writing. He told me the most important thing I needed to do before anything else was documentation. The security footage was a start, but the more I had, the better. He also walked me through what an equitable distribution of assets would look like in our state, what was mine coming into the marriage, what we'd acquired together, and what I needed to do immediately to protect myself financially. Do not move any money, he said. Don't close accounts. Don't make large purchases. Don't tip her off. Let her think everything is normal while you get your ducks in a row. What if I want to know who he is? I asked. Devin looked at me for a second. Then you hire someone for that. I hired someone for that. His name was Gary, and he came recommended by Devin. Quiet guy, mid-50s, looked like a retired accountant. He met me at a coffee shop, ordered a black coffee, slid a rate card across the table, and told me he'd have answers within 2 weeks. I told him I had a work trip coming up the following Thursday. He nodded like I'd just given him a gift. Those next 8 days were the longest of my life. I went home every evening, ate dinner with Janelle, watched TV, had normal conversations about her projects, about the house, about a trip we'd been vaguely talking about taking to Portugal. She had no idea. She was completely relaxed, completely normal, completely herself. Which at first made me wonder if I was wrong about everything, if maybe Dave had somehow misread the situation. But then I'd remember the footage. That car, 9:14 p.m. lights off, door closing. I kept moving forward. On the Wednesday night before my trip, I was sitting on the couch watching a game when Janelle came downstairs and asked if I'd packed yet. Very casual. Very natural. But this time I noticed the timing of the question. It wasn't about caring whether I had what I needed. It was about confirming I was leaving. Early morning flight, I said. I'll pack tonight. She nodded, went to get a glass of water, came back and sat next to me and tucked her feet under her and watched the game like everything was fine. I put my arm around her because I didn't want her to know. And I sat there with my arm around my wife thinking about all the ways a person can be two completely different people at the same time. Thursday morning, I kissed her goodbye, put my bag in the truck, and drove to a hotel 45 minutes away. Gary had already confirmed he was on it. He texted me at 9:12 p.m. Black Civic in the driveway. Male, approximately 35 to 40, dark hair. I'll have photos and a name by morning. I put my phone face down on the hotel bed and turned on the TV and watched something I don't even remember for 3 hours. At 7:04 a.m. Friday, Gary texted again. Call me when you can. I called him. He told me the man's name was Brandon. He told me where Brandon worked. He told me, and this is the part that landed like a brick, that Brandon and Janelle had gone to graduate school together. That they had dated for 2 years before she and I got serious. That he was, apparently, never entirely gone from her life. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed in the quiet of that room, and I just held the phone against my ear long after Gary had finished talking. I called Devin next. He told me Gary would send a full report with photographs, timestamps, everything. He told me to bring it to his office. He told me we were ready to move. Here's what most people don't understand about this kind of betrayal. The hardest part isn't the anger. The anger actually feels clean. The hardest part is the grief. The grief for the version of your life you thought you had. For every plan you made together, every future conversation you imagined, every ordinary Tuesday morning that you now have to look back at and reassign a different meaning to. That's the part that sits on your chest at 2 a.m. Not the rage. The grief. I let myself feel it that Friday morning in that hotel room. I gave myself about an hour. I cried once, hard, and then I stopped. And then I called room service, ordered breakfast, ate every single bite, and started planning what came next. I called Devin back that afternoon and told him to start preparing the paperwork. He walked me through the next steps. We would move to freeze the joint account to prevent any unilateral large transfers. He would begin drafting the petition, and I would be served the documents. She would be served the documents within the week. He told me again, don't tip her off. Don't confront her before she's served. Let the paperwork do the talking first. That weekend I drove back home. Janelle seemed happy to see me. She made dinner pasta, garlic bread, a bottle of wine. We sat across from each other at the table we'd picked out together at a furniture store 18 months ago, and we talked about her current design project, and she complained about a difficult client. And I listened, and I nodded, and I poured her more wine, And I said the right things at the right times. I have never felt more alone in my life than I did at that dinner table. Not because of what she'd done, but because I had to sit there and look at this person I had loved completely and realize that the intimacy I thought we had was entirely one-directional. Monday I worked from home. Normal day. Devin called me at 3 p.m. to confirm everything was in motion. The process server would be coming Wednesday afternoon. Tuesday night, Janelle asked if I had any more trips coming up. She was pouring coffee. Back to me, very casual. I almost smiled. Not for a few weeks, I said. She said, "Oh, good. I feel like we've barely seen each other lately." I said, "Yeah, I feel that way too." Wednesday I told her I had a site visit in the morning and might not be home until late afternoon. She kissed me goodbye at the door. I drove around the block, parked, and waited. At Doi. 7:00 p.m., Devin texted me. Done. I sat in my truck for a few minutes. Then I drove back home. I walked in through the garage door and Janelle was standing in the kitchen. She had an envelope in her hand and her face had gone completely white. She looked at me and she opened her mouth and closed it and opened it again. "Marcus." "Don't," I said. Not angry. Not loud. Just firm. She started to say something about needing to explain, about how it wasn't what I thought, about how it had been over for months, about how she'd been going to tell me. The words were coming fast and desperate and I stood there and I let them wash over me and I felt nothing but that same quiet I'd felt in my cold car in the garage looking at security footage. When she stopped, I said, "I know about Brandon. I know it's been happening every time I left for a trip. I have the footage, I have photographs, I have everything. My attorney has everything. You'll be hearing from him." She stared at me. "And the joint account has been adjusted," I said. "My attorney's name and number are on the paperwork. I'd suggest you get representation." I had packed a bag 2 nights earlier while she was in the shower. I'd put it in the trunk of my truck. I picked up the bag I'd left by the door, and I walked back out to my truck, and I drove to my cousin's place where I'd already arranged to stay. I won't pretend the weeks that followed were easy. They weren't. Divorce proceedings are not dignified for anyone involved. There are conversations and negotiations and moments where you have to sit across a table from someone you used to love and divide your shared life into categories. It is brutal and it is exhausting. And there are nights where you stare at the ceiling and wonder how you got here. But I never wavered. Devin kept telling me I was one of his most clear-headed clients, which I think is just his way of saying I wasn't calling him in a panic at midnight. I didn't need to. My father's voice was always there. The man who reacts loses. I had already won this moment the day I shook Dave's hand on the driveway and chose to think before I moved. The settlement was fair. The house we bought together was sold and split. I kept my retirement account, which I'd started before the marriage. She kept her car. We divided the rest cleanly, legally, without dramatics. Brandon, by the way, was irrelevant to me throughout all of it. He was not the cause. He was the symptom. What Janelle chose to do that was hers alone. I never said his name out loud again after I said it to her that afternoon in the kitchen. 4 months after that Wednesday afternoon, I was officially divorced. I moved into a rental apartment 20 minutes from work. It was small and it was quiet and it was completely mine. I bought one piece of furniture at a time. I cooked my own meals. I called my parents on Sundays. I started running again, something I'd let slip over the past couple of years. The first morning, I woke up in that apartment and felt something that wasn't grief or anger or exhaustion, just calm. I actually sat up in bed for a second because it surprised me. Calm. Like coming up for air. I called Dave about a week after I'd moved out. I wanted him to know that what he'd done mattered, that it took guts to walk across that driveway and say something when it would have been so much easier to just look away. He picked up on the second ring and I told him everything had been handled, that I was okay, that I was grateful. He got quiet for a second and then he said, "That's all I needed to hear, son." And then he cleared his throat and said Carol wanted to know if I'd come over for dinner sometime. I laughed for the first time in what felt like a long time. "Tell Carol yes," I said. "Absolutely yes." Here's what I want to say to anyone who finds themselves in the place I was standing on that driveway, trash bag in hand, stomach dropping before a single word is said. Don't react. Don't blow up. Don't make it easy for them to reframe the situation and make you the problem. Be still. Think. Get a lawyer before you get emotional. Get your documentation before you get your confrontation. Let the paperwork be the moment. Let the truth speak before you do. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be ready. And if you have a neighbor like Dave, a quiet, steady man who chose to be honest when it would have been easier not to buy him something nice, he earned it more than he'll ever take credit for.